Is there a word for tabletop RPG players who go to ridiculous lengths to create a mechanically powerful PC? People that use alternative rules and even homebrew to find an advantage at the table. Someone who literally bends and breaks the rules with no regard for anyone else at the table. Now, I'm sure that about 1/3 of the people watching this video are already screaming the correct answer at me through the internet. When I asked this question online, I got 3 answers. Roughly 2/3 of the people responded with either Power Gamer or Min-Maxer. Here's why I think those actually don't fit. Power Gamer. A player who clearly cares about the mechanics of the game and wants to play a powerful character. Basically, 5e promotes this to a degree. You gotta pick the correct stats for your character class. Being a character who is good at something is fundamental to the game. That was suggested, but again, that isn't a term that implies that the person needs to go outside the rules to get what they want. Min-maxing just implies that a person is using a rule set to make a character who is really good at certain things in the game. There are broken rules that people can exploit, but in my experience, it's not that annoying to deal with because they still have to work within the spell point / action economy. For 5e, and most games are pretty well balanced, so this is not going to be that annoying. The most important thing is that at the end of the day, min-maxers do not cheat the system. They might do something OP, but they're going to do it within the rules. 1/3 of the people that responded to my question online responded with a term that I had heard before, but I didn't realize was actually the perfect word to use to describe these people. Munchkin. This actually seems to be the closest term. Game designer Andrew Rilestone's definition is as follows. One who, being told that this is a game about politics and intrigue in 17th century Italy, asks to play as a ninja. Hey, let's talk about Munchkins, the definition of the word, since it's been around since 1984, and why I think that word needs to come back in the RPG community.
Steve Jackson and Steve Jackson Games and artist John Kovalik have a lot to answer for, because this game certainly has toned down the term Munchkin over the years. Here's some definitions from around the internet. From the D&D Wiki, originally, the term was taken from The Wizard of Oz. Where Munchkins were short and ridiculous creatures, it was used by older players to address their childish comrades. However, before long, it came to refer to anyone who engaged in a juvenile gaming style, regardless of their height, age, or experience. The term has been in use dating back as far as 1984. From a Reddit conversation on r/RPG, a Munchkin lies about rolls, accidentally interpreting spells to be far more powerful than they are. Wait, metamagic raises the level of the spell beyond what I can cast? Golly, I never knew that. And so on. They are hell-bent on just being immortal and steamrolling every encounter, which is why they cheapen every campaign. In other words, they want a Monty Hall campaign, and if you don't provide it, they invent it. It is different from playing an optimized character, one who tries to create a character to do whatever to the best capability within the rules. The latter does not break the other's enjoyment of the game. Munchkin equals someone that breaks the game. They will search through sourcebooks, get and apply house rules, create new content for the purpose of optimization, and may even selectively ignore rules or blatantly cheat. Munchkins tend to take the rules to the most absurd limits of comprehension as they translate the rules as written to suit their purposes, often choosing the path completely in opposition to the spirit of the rules if multiple meanings to phrases can be found. On the Quora role-playing games What is a Munchkin question, being a Munchkin is more of a mindset than a particular action. They don't respect the spirit of the game and instead embark on an immature quest to empower their characters, up to and including cheating. Their character is basically an author insert, and they use it to gain fulfillment and control they often lack in real life. On the TV tropes section on Munchkin, the Munchkin's motivation for adopting this attitude often stems from a mistaken belief that tabletop RPGs are like trading card games and esports, where beating your enemies is the top priority and learning to exploit the most subtle nuances of the game's mechanics for competitive advantage is considered skillful. While this might be true for games that are all about winning, this attitude is fundamentally opposed to the spirit of most tabletop RPGs, where winning is usually secondary to just enjoying the experience of playing, assuming there's a victory condition to begin with. And there is ample freedom to enjoy this pastime in many different ways. This clash of values, the pro player focused on the end goal of destroying everything and winning, versus the rest of the role players whose focus is on the journey, the end goal is not the entire game to them, is what makes the Munchkin so widely reviled by role players. And finally, on the RPG.net forum, the definition is described as someone who designs a character with the explicit goal of being better than the other player characters, especially by taking advantage of something in the game system. Power gamers design their characters to be as powerful as possible, but may be decent role players anyways. Munchkins are those that will do whatever is necessary to gain every last bit of power they can think of. The difference between power gamers and Munchkins is that power gamers disdain cheating. These definitions encapsulate what I've seen in the community almost perfectly, and you can tell that most of them were written by people that have been playing D&D for far longer than I have. Let's take a sidetrack, shall we? And note that it used to be common for younger players to be guided to avoid the pitfalls of being a Munchkin early. Many people experienced the same scenario as a younger player, the Sir Grafto comic, or the Z animation. They basically were being Munchkins and then learned not to do dumb stuff. This hasn't been the case in modern RPGs. A person on Twitter claimed that someone who wants to ensure mechanical success as much as possible, that's called a player.
Someone who wants to ensure as much mechanical success as possible, that's called a player. No, that's called a Munchkin.
I got responses on posting the Sir Grafo comic of, and then the player never tried to do anything creative again. Doing nonsensical stuff way outside the boundaries of the mechanical rules just to look cool isn't creative. It's childish, juvenile behavior. True creativity comes with limitations. Playing D&D, where you allow anything, quickly becomes boring for everybody at the table, including the person who's trying to act out their power fantasies. We've already seen several examples of players in public games that act like Munchkins, that intentionally misuse rules and fudge dice. Yes, there's actually been quite a lot of that. In my own personal experience, I have dealt with players exactly like this. even to the point where other players contacted me after the game and said, hey, don't take this personally. That's just how this guy is. It's a shame. Tabletop role-playing games are the most accessible and accepting of players nowadays. And that's unfortunately allowed people who fundamentally don't want to play a social game to permeate the hobby. And that's a real issue for DMs like me who are trying to run games for new players. That's what I've been primarily doing in the last couple of years. And these types of munchkins keep on cropping up.
Why? Because they have already been kicked out of every other game in town. Like, they don't want to play in a game with new players, but they've been kicked out of other games in town because people just don't want to deal with them anymore.
And it's very obvious why they don't get invited to other games after a while. They're always going to be on the fringes of the hobby, looking for new games. Communication clearly needs to be a priority. But apparently there's just a certain percentage of people that just assume this is the regular way of playing the game. How the heck are you supposed to communicate with those people? We're ready. We need to make Munchkin a well-known word in the community again, especially amongst new players. Is this a bad thing? I don't think so. As far as I can tell, very few people use Munchkin as a pejorative, other than talking specifically about a tabletop player who exhibits very specific negative traits. Without this specific term, people are going to use other terms like power gamer and min-maxers, which are going to get unfairly lumped in with the juvenile nonsense of the Munchkin. There are a lot of videos out there nowadays, and a vast majority of them are about optimization, and the vast majority of those make them work within the vanilla rules in some way. But there are so many people who are quick to say, well, you can just use whatever rules you want in D&D. No, the Dungeon Master can use whatever rules they want in D&D. A player that does that is called a Munchkin. In short, a Munchkin is the perfect term. It works for any perspective of the game. I'm implementing a no Munchkin policy in my games, and if I have to, I'll link some of the definitions that are in this video. And I hope a lot of other people do as well. Honestly, I was going to talk more about this, but I think I might just do a second video. This video, I think, is good enough discussing, that the word Munchkin and what it originally meant, and how apparently things never change, and how that definition is alive and well in 2023, and how, having a word that describes someone who cares more about their game than everyone else around the table I think that's a good thing. And let me know what you think. Maybe I'm completely off base here. Maybe it is a bad thing to have a very specific pejorative word for something like this. Maybe because I am running a lot of games for strangers, maybe this is something that's going to be very specific for someone like me, and most DMs just don't deal with this. But considering how many RPG horror stories there are out there, I think that it is good to have a conversation about this specific topic. More videos to come. Thank you for watching.